Hey, it's Tim.
And it's Amy from GoWithLess. We're so glad you're here with us today. In this week's video, we're going to be sharing why you may want a house sitter in your house, whether or not you have pets, whether or not you own or rent, if you have a home, why you might want a house sitter when you travel. We hope you'll stay tuned for the whole video.
Every Wednesday here on our channel, we come out with a new video, typically talking about our early retirement or our nomadic lifestyle. In 2015, we left our careers in our late 40s and retired early. And in January of 2020, we sold our home and became full-time nomads.
We hope you'll give our video today a thumbs up. Subscribe over here. We're talking about things like house sitting, early retirement, travel hacking, nomad living, and all of that on our channel each week. Now, Tim and I have been house sitting since we retired early back in 2015. So we've had 6 full years house sitting. So we have a lot of experience, and we're going to be sharing some real world examples of holy cow, why you might want a house sitter in your home. If you saw our video last week, it was how to get started as a house sitter. So today we're going to flip the coin and talk about it from the home owner side. And the way we look at it is a house sitter is kind of like insurance.
I can say it's almost identical to insurance. So the nice thing about it, though, is it's very affordable. As a matter of fact, the style of house sitting that we do, we don't charge anything.
Super affordable, free.
It's basically free for us to come into home. The only expense that would come into us having us come into the home is some marginal increase in your utilities. So let's say that you're probably going to keep your internet running if you're gone for 5 or 6 weeks or a month or whatever. You're going to keep your water on, your electricity on. And so the only thing that the cost that would come from us being in your home is it might cost more because we're running the air conditioner more or something like that. So it is just very affordable. Insurance is a great way to look at it. We're going to talk about 3 examples of things that we've experienced just over the past year. Out of 7 house sits that we've been in, or 7 house sitting situations, 3 of those have had deals that could have turned into disasters if we weren't there to sort of immediately address what was going on.
So actually, I look at it as we have 3 kind of big categories of why you might want a house sitter no matter what. And number 1 is because things go wrong in houses. We have owned houses throughout our lives, whether they've been together or separate. And thankfully, Tim is extremely handy because things go wrong in houses. That's some of the reason why we don't have a house ourselves, why we're full-time nomads. The bigger reason is because we only use it probably for 2 or 3 weeks a year, so it doesn't make sense for us to have one. But a big reason is because stuff goes wrong and you would need to have someone there to take care of all of that. Now, one of the examples is from a year ago. If you've been watching us for a while, you may remember the farm sit we were on. Well, they didn't even have pets in the house. They had all kinds of animals, maybe 20 or so animals outside of the house. They could have just had someone taking care of that. But Tim and I were watching television one night, and we hear like what sounded like a geyser behind us, and there was a small half bath. We had never ever entered this half bath because they had a lot of bathrooms, and the toilet was like a geyser shooting up to the ceiling.
So the feed line to the toilet had basically broken loose. It had just, I guess, old age had given up the ghost, and there is water shooting up to the ceiling.
Clean water.
And so clean water. And so I go into the toilet and I turn off the valve, and the water will not turn off. So there's like a calcium buildup in the valve. And so what I have to do is I have to rig something together to make it so that the water doesn't continue to run out. So we set up a bucket and we get it so it's sort of just slowly creeping out. And then we have to get up in the middle of the night and actually go dump the bucket because we can't get out. Number 1, we can't get a plumber in the house to fix it. And so
because of COVID
Because of COVID, and then I have to go to Home Depot the next day and buy the supplies to ultimately just replace the feed line. So at the end of it, it was a pretty easy fix. However, if we weren't there and this this happened and the house if this water were running for a month, it would have cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix the damage that would have been done from this water just basically flooding the house. So
even in 10 seconds, we would have maybe had a mildew problem. So it took about 10 seconds for Tim to get to the valve, turn it off.
I'll go with 90 seconds. But
90 seconds to turn off?
I had to get up, get in, turn the water off, understand what's going on.
Okay.
And so
I bet it was under 20.
And so we had to go get a fan from a neighbor, one of those big giant box fans, to actually
like an industrial fan.
To try and get the floor dried out. So
after like 20 seconds.
So yeah, it was a complete mess. And so luckily we were there.
Okay, the second one was at a friend's home who was on volunteering in South Africa for several months, and we were in her home for about 6 weeks during the giant snowstorm, freeze storm in Texas that took 10 or 12 days in February of this year. So she has no pets. She just rents in an apartment building, and it was these like single-digit temperatures in Texas in a place that this is like a once-a-century situation, and we were able to keep the heat on when there was power. We were able to drip the faucet before the water was turned off, and this was very fortunate because after everything was turned back on again, there was massive destruction throughout her complex. We would see drywall being pulled out of units. We figured that these were uninhabited, open units maybe, but we would think that she had beautiful things. We would think that her home might have been destroyed and all of her things in it. And even though she was a renter and it wouldn't have been her responsibility to repair her home, certainly all of her things she cares about.
Yep, so Texas is wholly, in this part of Texas, it's wholly unprepared for this sort of weather. And so as a matter of fact, the water
it happens
heater,
once every 100 years.
the water heater and the washer and dryer in her unit were actually out on the porch, so exposed outside. And so the feed line into the home is almost just exposed. And so we were able to do some things again to keep some heat in the room where that exposure was happening, just make sure that it didn't turn into a disaster in her place. For weeks.
No damage.
After the storm. Her home had no damage. For weeks after the storm, there were multiple units in the complex where we would see drywall. It seems like every bit of drywall was coming out of some of these places, and people were working on getting the drywall out.
Dumpsters full of it.
Just replacing the entire infrastructure inside of a place. If the pipes burst in your walls, you have to go in and figure out what's going on, and it was a mess. And so luckily, her place was fine. We believe because we were there and able to sort of just adjust things. It certainly didn't hurt. We're not going to say with 100% certainty if we weren't there, it wouldn't have been okay otherwise, but it certainly didn't hurt that we were there.
Now the third one is the house that we're on now. We're here for 12 weeks and we heard birds in the attic. So she is actually a renter here. So she's gone for 12 weeks. She's a renter and the landlord lives maybe half an hour away. So I texted her and said, we hear birds in the attic. She said, call the landlord, text the landlord. So I did. And the landlord said, I'm on holiday myself. I'll be over there in a week with somebody who can climb up into the attic and take care of this. So they did. They found a place where the birds were coming in, sealed all that up, had a humongous bird's nest built in the attic. But one day, while we were waiting for them to come, I walk into the laundry room and there's a live bird in the closed off laundry room, alive, and that could have been real because of how the ducts work. The bird flew out of this duct in the laundry room. Yeah, so imagine if there was a lot of birds.
I was able to ultimately capture the bird. It was a smaller, just a baby, and let it out. So that was nice. But if these birds had, certainly this bird or an adult bird could have caused all sorts of damage in the laundry room, just flapping around and knocking things over, or be dead and smelly. And so same thing in the attic. I mean, this was a big bird's nest in the attic. So multiple birds could have gotten trapped in the attic and died. And it could have been a smelly mess, or they could have caused damage in the attic. They could have eaten electrical wires. There's all sorts of things that could have happened with these birds if they weren't removed from the attic.
Now, a little bit about our history. So back in 2015, we sold our home, and then we moved, a big standalone home. Then we moved into our rental, our former rental, which was a townhouse. We moved into it. So the first freestanding home, we had a dog in that home, and anytime we left the house, we had a dog sitter. So she would have hated having a kennel. But when we moved to our townhome, all of the outside was taken care of. We looked at it as like a lock and go sort of a thing. And so someone took care of the shoveling in the snow and the lawn mowing and all of that. So we thought that it would be okay because everything on the outside was taken care of. But what we realized through the examples we just said is there could have been all kinds of things that happened. And there's another one that we're coming up with in the next category, that we should have had a house sitter. So we're just kind of having people learn from our own mistakes. We had one when we had a pet. We didn't think we needed one after we didn't have a pet. We should have had one.
Yeah, so a few years ago, we took a 9-week trip to Europe. And in that trip, we had a camera pointed at our front door. And so we thought we had some security, just like Amy had just elaborated on. We thought it's going to be fine. And so there are a variety of things that happened during that 9 weeks where it would have been great if we had somebody there just watching after our property. So one morning, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, Denver time, somebody came and rang our doorbell. And so...
Which is really weird.
Which is really weird. And to this day, we don't have any clue what that was about. But if that was somebody actually casing the joint and trying to figure out if anybody's home so that we're going to be able to break in,
The house was dark
The
for,
house was
for
dark
weeks and
for
weeks
weeks
and
and
weeks.
weeks, and so that would have been a good clue that nobody's there if you ring the door and nobody answers the door, and so that was one issue.
Also, I'm going to say a couple. So, first of all, you may or may not know this, the U.S. Postal Service, at least where we were, would not hold our mail for more than 30 days. You may say, oh, no big deal, just have my mail held. No more than 30 days. So we were gone for one summer 9 weeks, and the other summer, I think, like 7 weeks. So that was a hard thing. We couldn't just, what are we going to do with our mail? So we completely imposed, asked a friend and a family member 2 different times to kind of pop in our home every week or 2, and that wasn't enough. So having just someone pop in every 10 days is not enough security for your home. So they did come and grab our mail. Again, no one needed to mow the lawn. But if you have a lawn that is going to maybe need mowing while you're gone, maybe you're gone for a week, then you might want to have a house sitter take care of that kind of thing so that it doesn't look unlived in, that someone doesn't leave a pizza menu attached to your front doorknob, and it looks obvious you have a pizza menu on your doorknob for your entire stay, signaling that there's nobody home.
We also owned 2 cars at the time. In our complex, we have one garage space, and so one of our cars is in the garage. The other was potentially going to be sitting out in the parking lot for 9 weeks, never moving. And so we came up with an answer, and we gave it to a friend for the 9 weeks. He didn't own a car at the time, and so it was a win-win sort of situation. But we could have just given that to a house sitter, and that again would have been a fantastic way to sort of deal with our car as well and make sure that it didn't have issues over the course
and your
of
plants.
Yeah. Oh, and then the last thing, I had some beloved succulents and plants that I just beloved, and so we had to give those away because obviously if they were going to be there for 9 weeks unwatered, and without good sunlight, they would not have survived.
And we had our blinds closed, so they would have had no sunlight. We didn't want our floors and our furniture stained from the sun.
Yep.
And so we had no plants after that.
No plants, which actually at the end of it wasn't any big deal. That was one less thing to get rid of whenever we moved away. But nonetheless, it would have been good to have them for the year after the trip, just to enjoy.
But even in today's day, you will still have a Yellow Pages delivered. You will still have the local town newspaper delivered. Even if you are doing everything digitally, this stuff still comes.
Or a package misdelivered.
A package. We had a package misdelivered here. So this wasn't even destined for our home. It was for a home blocks and blocks away. So they would have had no idea it was here. And yeah, so
it would have sat here for weeks.
Signaling nobody is home. So just for the security of it. And third, and certainly this is like the no-brainer, would be for the pets. And we call it a win-win-win in all but the most reclusive of cats. We call it a win-win-win.
That's right. So the wins are going to be a win for us whenever we are being pet sitters because we have a roof over our head. A win for the homeowner for peace of mind. So knowing that your home is going to be taken care of and it's not going to have all these issues that we just described, and that the pets are going to be taken care of. And then the pets themselves are going to have a win as well, and that they have somebody there who's going to love them and feed them and take care of them and keep them on their routine. So obviously if there are pets involved it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
Now we're on a sit right now that the dog, one of the 3 little dogs, was in a kennel for, I think it was 6 weeks last fall. During that 6 weeks, the dog went downhill. So he's changed his personality. He's become really needy, and he has Cushing's disease. The homeowner believes that both of these things are directly attributed to the stay in the kennel. Our own dog would have hated being in a kennel, despised it. We would have been tortured. She would have been tortured. So we had a dog sitter, house sitter every single time we left. And the way that so for having like the neighbor kid or something come in and feed the cats or something, even not super social cats eventually warm up to us and sit on our laps and sit with us while we're watching television. And the cats who are not people cats still seem to like having people around, don't they?
Yeah, they certainly do. So now we're going to talk about just a few reasons why we don't think, you may still think you might need a house sitter, but some reasons why we think
Here's reasons why maybe not.
Maybe not.
So first, if you have a pet, always. So anytime you have a pet, always, even if it's for one night, have a house sitter. Number 2, though, is really the first is why you shouldn't have a house sitter, is maybe you live like in a doorman apartment building. So you have the security of the apartment. You because of the security pieces completely taken care of if you don't have pets, and if anything breaks, maybe they're going to know it, like with a plumbing issue around you. That is going to be okay. And number 2 is maybe if it's really, really short. So if it's under a week, I might be okay with that. And as an example, Tim and I might go on an international trip for a week. Maybe we don't get travel insurance. But when we're going for 6 weeks, we do get travel insurance. It's just that there's more of a chance for things to go wrong with a longer trip. So over a week or more, we would probably, the longer the trip, the more of a chance we would be getting a house sitter coming in just in case. Just that insurance piece.
That's exactly right. The site that we use for finding amazing sits and the site that you might want to use if you're a homeowner and you are looking for amazing sitters is called Trusted House Sitters. We have a discount link below, so if you go click on that, you'll be taken to the site and you can look at all the amazing things that are there.
That's in the video description just below. If you are a house sitter especially, we think it's important to bring house owners into the universe because there aren't enough owners doing this. There's a lot of sitters who see people living the lifestyle like us and we're going to cool places and with cute pets and all these pictures. So a lot of sitters come in inspired by doing this, but we need home owners. So I hope that you'll share this with anyone you know who has a home, whether or not they have pets, certainly share it on your social media as well.
So our question this week is, whether you're a homeowner or a renter or you happen to be a house sitter, what is the craziest thing that you've experienced when you're there that could have turned into a complete disaster if you weren't sitting there dealing with the issue immediately?
I'm going to give a quick example. Friends of mine went to Disney World. They came home. They had massive flooding in their home. They didn't have a sitter. They had to move. It wasn't just a temporary issue. They had to move. Could you imagine coming home from your lovely Disney World vacation and you have to move on the other side of it? It would be a reason to have a house sitter beyond anything else. So next week, we're going to be coming to you with our May spending breakdown, our numbers. And we already know what they are, and they are massive. You are going to think that your friends here at GoWithLess have lost their minds. So make sure you subscribe, like, tune in next week because it is a doozy of a spending video. See you
Adios.
next Wednesday.